I'm a 29-year-old woman who recently received a call from my mother, someone I hadn't spoken to in almost 5 years. She reached out because my sister, Melissa, 27, and her husband, who was supposed to be my husband originally, had just gone through a tragedy. To give some background, my sister Melissa hooked up with my fiancé Lucas on the day of our engagement. Lucas and I had been together since college, and he proposed after almost 5 years of dating. He threw a surprise party for us on the night of our engagement, and I was thrilled until around 1 a.m. when I went into the backyard for better reception and caught my sister and Lucas passionately making out. I was shocked and hurt, feeling like my world had crumbled. They didn't notice me at first, but when they did, it was too late. I fled to a nearby hotel, hyperventilating and trying to process what I had seen. Then Melissa texted me, confessing her love for Lucas and admitting this had been going on for a long time. Later, Lucas texted me saying he proposed to me to try and forget Melissa. But it didn't work. He claimed it wasn't about me, it was about him and Melissa being meant for each other. He saw me as a placeholder to finally be with her. I stayed at the hotel for a couple of days, trying to pull myself together, feeling like life was playing a cruel joke on me. After nearly 4 days away, I returned home to collect my things and resume work to avoid getting fired. When I arrived, I discovered that my family had been living with Lucas, waiting for my return. It might have seemed touching under different circumstances, but I had left abruptly, ignoring everyone's attempts to reach out. When I finally showed up, chaos ensued. Everyone rushed to hug me and express relief at my return, even Melissa. She hugged me tearfully, but I was too stunned to react. Eventually, when things calmed down, I announced that I was back only to gather my belongings and leave for good. Lucas had been silent until then, but when I said I was leaving, he mentioned he had already packed and was moving in with Melissa. My family, my parents, aunt, and dad's sister, all smiled widely, despite the situation not being joyful for me. Melissa stood by Lucas, looking sad but still smiling. I couldn't hold back and demanded to know why they were all smiling. As far as I was concerned, Melissa had broken off my engagement and taken my boyfriend of almost 5 years. There was nothing funny or sweet about it. My mother spoke up, explaining they couldn't change the past but could accept the future. They believed Melissa and Lucas belonged together, even if their relationship started from cheating. They were sorry but felt this was for the best. Melissa apologized for falling in love with my boyfriend and wished she could have told me sooner. She acknowledged it was a painful way for me to find out. But they claimed to be deeply in love and committed to each other. Then, right in front of me, they kissed, and my mother even wiped a tear from her eye. I couldn't contain myself and told them their behavior was disgusting, not sentimental or emotional. To my surprise, my family seemed annoyed with me, saying I was being bratty and selfish. They thought I should be happy for my sister instead of making it all about myself. I was shocked by their reaction and demanded they leave my house immediately. I couldn't understand how they could defend Melissa and Lucas while painting me as the bad guy. My father intervened, telling me not to act like a child and to accept that these things happen. He wanted me to celebrate my sister finding her soulmate instead of being jealous. I couldn't handle their attitude, so I packed some things and left without waiting to hear them out. They called after me, but I felt they cared more about Melissa's happiness than mine or what was right. They were so focused on justifying Melissa's actions that they forgot about my feelings. After that, my family tried to reach out several times, but I never responded. I didn't feel like I owed them anything after how they treated me. A couple of weeks later, I received an invitation to Melissa and Lucas's wedding, which I declined. Many of our mutual friends also declined the invitation in support of me. Some relatives who knew the truth also distanced themselves from my family after seeing how they treated me. It's been 5 years now, and I've essentially cut my family out of my life completely. They occasionally try to reconnect, sending well wishes on my birthday or New Year, but I always ignore them. I didn't block them, but I removed them from my followers and friends list on social media. I wanted them to see that I was living a great life and maybe feel jealous. It was petty, but it felt like the least I could do after everything they put me through. Until recently, I had no idea what they had been doing in the past few years. Then, about 4 days ago, my mother called me from an unfamiliar number. I almost hung up immediately, but she sounded desperate, so I reluctantly agreed to talk for a couple of minutes. My sense of humanity wouldn't let me turn my back on her completely. When my mother called, she explained that Melissa and Lucas had started a business a couple of years ago, but it was failing badly. Their investors were pulling out because the business wasn't making any profit. Despite borrowing more money, their situation worsened, and now they were deep in debt with loan sharks after them. They were being hounded by employees, investors, and lenders. My mother, aware of my comfortable lifestyle, saw me as a last resort to help them out. She begged me to loan them money, specifically nearly $75,000, to pay off their debts. I asked why Melissa wasn't reaching out herself. My mother explained that Melissa and Lucas have forbidden her from approaching me directly because of what happened 5 years ago. Melissa wasn't ready to accept help from me. For months, my parents and even Lucas's family have been supporting them as much as possible, but it wasn't enough. Both families were retired and needed to support themselves too. My mother felt she had no other option but to ask me for help. I could afford to assist them, but I didn't want to. Melissa had chosen not to contact me for help, and I believed they had lost any right to make demands from me. The day they cheated on me, I told my mother that I couldn't and wouldn't help them, even if I could. My mother sounded upset and said I was being cruel, urging me to think about our family. I pointed out that Melissa and Lucas didn't consider me when they had their affair, and my family didn't think about me when they supported them. So I didn't feel obligated to help them now. I've worked hard to achieve where I am today, and I'm not going to just give $75,000 to two people who don't deserve it. My mother started crying on the phone, calling me selfish and warning that my sister and her husband would face serious trouble if I didn't help. I told her I couldn't help them and hung up. Since then, my mother has been bombarding me with texts every hour, pleading for me to reconsider and think about my sister. She insists this isn't the time for revenge and that I'll regret not helping in the future. I feel torn and unsure of what to say. I don't want to be seen as the bad guy, but I also don't want to help them after what they did. Am I the asshole for refusing to financially help my sister after she stole my fiancé 5 years ago? Update 1. I finally decided to block my family. I kept them around earlier because I wanted them to see my life and maybe feel jealous. I also thought cutting them off completely might be a regret if something bad happened to them, but now I don't care. I should have cut them off 5 years ago. I don't know why I kept them around for so long. Refusing to help my sister now isn't petty. It's just the sensible thing to do. They've already wasted a lot of money, and I doubt they can repay me even if I give them $75,000. While I'm well off, I can't just drop that kind of money without expecting it back. Even if they were close friends, I'd expect repayment. But Melissa and Lucas are neither close to me nor capable of paying me back, so there's no reason for me to help them. I talked to a couple of friends about this, and they agreed that I did the right thing by refusing to give them money, not out of revenge, but because it's impractical and unrealistic to expect me to help after they betrayed me in the past. Blocking my mother means she can't guilt-trip me anymore, so I feel relieved and have nothing to worry about. Update 2. Something major happened today. I was at work when my neighbor called, saying there was a couple outside my house screaming for me to come out and talk to them. My neighbor thought they seemed unstable and had been causing a scene for about an hour. I asked for a description, and deep down, I knew it was Melissa and Lucas. I rushed home immediately because I couldn't risk them getting inside. Luckily, I arrived in about 15 minutes and caught them trying to pick the lock on my door. I confronted them, asking what they were doing. I tried to call the police, but Lucas knocked the phone from my hand before I could. Melissa told me they were just here to talk and didn't want anything from me. Well, not right now, at least. I agreed to talk but insisted it be outside in the yard. I didn't feel comfortable inviting them into my home given the tension. They agreed, which was a relief. Melissa started explaining that my mother had informed her about my phone call and how I had ignored subsequent texts and blocked them all. He told me my behavior was unfair and that I should have moved on by now, 5 years later. He'd accused me of seeking attention from my family with dramatic acts. Melissa said she felt insulted by my refusal to help them and came to discuss it. She mentioned that while she managed to gather money this time by selling their house and jewelry, she might need more in the future. She needed to rely on me for that support. I bluntly told her she couldn't count on me under any circumstances because I despised her and her husband. I was furious and expressed how much I hated them. I was so angry that I mentioned it took a lot of effort not to hit her. Then Lucas insisted I sign a document promising future financial support. I refused, knowing it wouldn't be valid if I was coerced into signing it. I told them both to leave, but Melissa pushed me, saying I owed it to them as family and couldn't run from my responsibilities. I was shocked by her actions and nearly resorted to violence. Instead, I grabbed my phone, which had fallen, and ran to my car. I sped off without looking back. They stayed at my house as I drove away, which was unfortunate for them, but I didn't stop to check. I decided to call the police and report what happened. When I returned home, the police had already arrived within 20 minutes. I explained everything, and they arrested Melissa and Lucas. I knew the charges might not be severe, but it was worth it to have them removed from my life. It's been a couple of hours since then, and I haven't heard from anyone in my family. I expected someone to reach out by now, even from different numbers, but there's been nothing. I'm guessing they're either done with the situation and won't bother me again, or they're waiting for things to calm down before trying to contact me. Update 3. Hi everyone, so it's been about a week since my last update. I had started to think that my family might leave me alone after I called the police on Melissa and Lucas. But unfortunately, I was wrong. Just yesterday, my parents showed up at my house, asking if they could talk to me. They seemed more humble and less arrogant than Melissa and Lucas, so I allowed them in. My mother started crying as soon as she entered and apologized for ever taking Melissa's side over mine. My father explained that after hearing about Melissa and Lucas's arrest and their behavior towards me, they couldn't see them the same way. They decided to cut them off. My mother continued crying while my father expressed regret for not supporting me when I was the victim. While I appreciated my parents finally coming to their senses, I explained that it was too little, too late for things to improve. I had become accustomed to living life on my own terms and didn't want to prioritize my family over myself anymore. Despite their visit and apology, I couldn't promise to work on rebuilding our relationship because I didn't see the point in salvaging something that felt irreparably damaged, even if it was with my parents. They protested a bit, suggesting we could fix things if we wanted to, but my reluctance was clear. I no longer wanted to try. I expressed my respect for their efforts, but reiterated that I was done with the relationship. They seemed disappointed but eventually left, asking if I could at least unblock them to stay in touch. I've unblocked my parents, which feels odd, but I've made my decision.